Library figures are an important part about what Dynascape is all about. Dynascape uses figures that have proven graphics, built-in line weights to give you that professional output. Let's have a look at Dynascape's figures and how to insert them. Dynascape's figures are broken down into libraries that make it easy to find the figures that you're looking for, all the way from symbols for architectural features such as doors and windows, window wells, that kind of thing, shrubs, perennials, trees, including rocks and patio furniture and all that kind of stuff. So how to insert them, basically it's all the same. They all insert the same way. They're all pre-drawn to scale so that when you bring them into your drawing, they already are scaled. There's a number of things you can do with them. Now there are over 1,200 library figures, and it may take some time for you to get familiar with all the ones that are in there and which ones that you like. You can customize it in that you can create your own list of favorites. You can also reorganize the order of the figures within a library. I'm going to show you first how to do that. For example, if I go to the shrubs library and I scroll down and I find a shrub figure that I like to use on a regular basis, for example this one here, say this one, I can right click on it. I can get a better view of it by toggling the figure view. It gives me a slightly enlarged view of it. I can also right click on it and add to favorites. That will add it to my list of favorites here. So I can add a list of shrubs and trees and rocks and have them all basically in one library, making it easier to find. I can also go to my library manager and open up the library manager, open up my library that has my shrubs in it. I can go down to that shrub. This one right here is one that I had, and I can move it to the front of the category. So I can make it basically the first figure in the list. So I can basically arrange all my favorites and move them around using these arrows here and get them in the order that I want to have them. I can click update and you'll see that it's updated my library. That's the first one in my list now. So to insert them, it's very simple. All you need to do is select the figure that you want to insert and it gets attached to your crosshair. So you're just left clicking on it, you're not dragging. You go over top of your drawing, place it where you want to place it. Right click and you're done. So you left, right. So it's very simple. You can do it very quickly. You can almost do it simultaneously, clicking left and right, and you can insert them in your drawing. I would recommend that when you insert your drawings that you turn your constraints off and your inference off. And the main reason is that when you try to edit them, for example, now that I've got them on my drawing, I can hit escape on my keyboard and I can left click on a shrub symbol and I can move it around. I can just tweak it to get maybe get them positioned properly, to get them the way I want to see them. And if your inference is on, it tends to prevent you from moving it a short distance because it wants to snap to one of the area where your grip is, usually the center of your symbol, because you're not moving far enough away. Inference will snap it, keep it in place until you move it further away, and you can't do the fine tuning that you want to do. So turn inference off, turn constraints off, because constraints will prevent you from moving it in a direction that you want to go, because now I'm controlled by my constraints. I can't move in the direction I want to go. So turn that off as well, and then you have the ability to finally control your figures. Inserting figures, because even though they're drawn to scale, you may wish to change the scale of the figure, make it bigger or smaller. Say for example, I've got a 3-foot shrub. I like this symbol, but it says it's 3 foot. When I measure that, it's going to be 3 feet across. They're all designed that way. But say for instance, I want to make this a 4-foot or 5-foot shrub or 4.5-foot shrub. I can set the scale for this symbol by saying I can make it 1.5, so that's going to make it 3 plus 1.5, so it's going to be a 4.5-foot diameter symbol. I can drop it in like that. I can also go to my width and my height, and I can say I want to make this a 5-foot by 5-foot symbol, and now when I go to insert it, it's going to be 5 foot across. So I can actually preset the actual height and width of that symbol if I want. So I can use these modifiers at the bottom here for each library. Now, until I go to another library, that's always going to stay there until I do something else. So if I'm done with that, I should clear it so that I don't accidentally start inserting figures at the wrong size unintentionally. So that's how you insert figures. Very simple. You left click, right click, and you're done. How do you rotate figures? Let me go to Rock's library to show you how to rotate figures while you're inserting them. Again, make sure constraints are off because constraints are going to prevent you from rotating it freely. So let's grab a figure that I can insert into the drawing. I'm going to zoom in on it. If I were to left click, right click, it drops it in the way it's positioned in the library. If I were to left click and move my mouse away and diagonally or around, you can see that I can rotate it to any angle that I wish. If I want it to stick at a certain angle, I need to left click. What will happen is it'll all of a sudden enlarge itself so that the symbol will go right over to where my crosshairs are, and I can also resize it. But now that I've got my angle set, if I were to right click, it'll snap it to the original size but at the angle that I've chosen. I can also resize a figure as well as rotate it before I finish inserting it as well. So I can left click, I can rotate it, left click again, I can resize it, so if I want to make it bigger, left click there, then right click, and it'll snap back to where I clicked, the size that it was when I last clicked. So I can insert them at a different size. I can also insert them at any rotation that I wish. One thing that you don't have to worry about with library figures is what layer are they on. Dynaescape will automatically set the library figures on the layer that they should be on. Basically, there's what's called an override layer for each library. For example, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to place some more figures on this drawing. I'm going to go to a different library. I'm going to select my perennials library. I'm going to drop in some perennial symbols, some just simple ones like this. If I go back to the layer list, you'll see that now that's on the perennials layer. If I go back to library figures and grab some trees, I can drop some tree figures on here as well. If I go to the layer list, you'll see it's on the trees layer. And that's an important part of the next step that I wanted to show, and that's the clustering tool. The clustering tool allows you to group like figures together where it will trim out the overlapping segments in between them. Now, if you've got a complex drawing with a lot of figures on it, because it'll select any figure that you select, whether it's a tree or a rock, and it can group a tree and a rock together if you grab them both at the same time. Dynaescape puts all those figures on separate layers so that you can isolate them using modes. If you go to the modes list, you can see that there's shrubs, perennials, and a trees, and even a rocks mode, so you can isolate those layers for the purpose of grouping and things like that. So if I want to first group my shrubs, I'll click on my shrubs mode. My shrubs mode will just leave me with my shrubs, and I can select all the objects that are that I want to group together to erase the inner segments. Then I can go to my trees mode and I can group those together. Then I can go to my perennials mode and group those together. If I click back on design mode, say no shadow, the first one here, it brings everything back. It turns all the layers back on. I can resume with my drawing. At this point, I'd like to talk a little bit about data selection. Basically what I mean by that is, how do you select objects? And you may have noticed that I selected them using a window around them, or I selected them by picking them. There's a couple ways that you can select items. If you're just selecting one, you can just pick it, but if you're selecting multiple items, there's a couple of ways you can do that to make it as efficient as possible. I'm going to undo all of my grouping of perennials and trees here and show you basically what I mean. So I've got a grouping of shrubs here, and I wish to select all these shrubs in this grouping here. I could pick them all one at a time, or I can create a window around them. And the way the windows work in Dynaescape for selection windows is that when you select things from left to right, which I'm doing right now, so I'm going diagonally from left to right, I have to completely enclose the figures that I want to select, or objects that I want to select. I can't overlap them like this. I have to actually completely enclose them and it will select them. If I were to not completely enclose them, say it went like this, where the ones at the bottom are just touching the box, it won't select those, it'll only select the ones that are completely enclosed. So that's from left to right. If I'm doing it from right to left, if I were to do the same thing from right to left, it won't select anything at all. Selecting from right to left requires me to cross the objects that I wish to select with the window that I'm creating. So the lines of my window that I've got here are going to cross the top 5 symbols there, and it will select all those. So I can select them in different ways depending on the scenario that I'm in. In some cases, one of the selection windows will work better than the others if you're in a tight spot. So you can select them a number of different ways. Left to right, you have to enclose them. Right to left, you have to cross them with the selection window. Dynaescape has some powerful tools to make repetitive tasks easy to do and efficient. For example, if you wanted to create a hedge or a rock wall or a row of trees, and you wanted to have them all spaced out perfectly and rotated properly around, say for example, this was a patio, and I wanted to put a hedge around the outside of it. And I could do that, one at a time by selecting. I'm going to go to my hedge symbol, like this one here. I could rotate it around, and I can drop them down one at a time. That's a really slow and an inefficient way to do that. Dynaescape has tools to make that perfect and fast. I'm going to just basically take this figure and drop it down in the middle of my patio as a reference. Hit repaint as a reference for the thing that I'm going to do here to create that hedge. In the edit toolbox, Dynaescape has a tool called offset figures along a line at an absolute distance. Basically what it needs is a line to place those symbols on. So I got to create that line first. Now I picked a 2-foot symbol, meaning that the insertion point's right in the middle of a symbol, so that means I have to create a line that's basically a foot or a little more than a foot away from this line in order for that hedge to be placed on it. So I'm going to use my offset tool. I'm going to offset it 1 foot 1 away, so it's an inch away from the edge. I'm going to offset this line to the outside. And then I'm going to select the offset figures tool. I'm going to choose my offset distance. I want them to be, they're 2-foot symbols, so I want them to be 20 inches apart, meaning they'll overlap a little bit. I'll have this set to rotate figures, so it'll rotate them all parallel to the line. Now it tells me select figures to be offset. This is the figure that needs to be offset. This is the line that I want to offset it on, and it'll automatically place it on that line at that distance, at that spacing. Then I can erase that original, erase the line, and then group these together to make it look like a hedge. I can do the same thing with rocks to create a rock wall, or brick symbols to make a soldier course. There's a lot of different areas where you can use this tool.